You know that feeling, right? You've got this absolutely incredible cinematic scene playing out perfectly in your head. The lighting is moody, the dialogue is razor sharp, the emotion is just totally palpable. But then you sit down to put it on paper, and you completely struggle to translate that vision. Well, welcome, future scriptwriters. Today, we are diving into the ultimate masterclass on taking your brilliant idea and turning it into a professionally formatted short film script. Whether you've been dreaming up stories for years or you're literally just getting started with your very first concept, this explainer is designed to give you the exact tools you need. We're going to bridge that vast gap between a fleeting thought in your imagination and a concrete, shootable script that a director, a crew, and actors can actually use to bring your story to life. Here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, lights, camera, script. Number 2, pre-writing and story structure. Number 3, building your characters. Number 4, elements of a script. And number 5, master scene script format. Let's get right into it.
All right, section 1, lights, camera, script.
To kick things off, we really have to define exactly what it is we're building here. By definition, a short film runs under 30 minutes. Films longer than that usually require secondary or minor plot lines, just to keep the audience interested. But for our specific practice today, we are aiming for a tight, highly impactful 5-minute story. Now, you might be wondering, why is a 5-minute story actually incredibly difficult to write? Well, it's because a 5-minute film requires absolutely ruthless efficiency. There is zero time for fluff, wandering thoughts, or unnecessary exposition. Every single line of dialogue, every single action must immediately move the plot forward. And to achieve that level of precision, we use a script. Think of a script as the foundational blueprint of your production. It's this highly specific written document containing the setting, the characters, dialogue, and stage directions. It tells everyone on set exactly what is happening, where it's happening, and who is speaking at any given second.
But listen, we aren't just writing about anything today. To give your script some real-world stakes, your writing challenge is to focus on a compelling socio-cultural issue. We want to transform a simple narrative into a deeply meaningful message. The goal here is integrating sustainable development goals into your art. Things like achieving gender equality, reducing inequality within our societies, or promoting true inclusivity. When you anchor your 5-minute film in a real social issue, you elevate it from just a simple video to a piece of multimodal literature. Now, I know that sounds like a super jargon-heavy term, but multimodal literature just means it uses visuals, sound, and text, all working together simultaneously to tell a story. For example, imagine writing a tense 5-minute scene showing the reality of unequal pay, but setting it entirely during a chaotic dinner rush in a restaurant kitchen. See what we did there? You're taking an abstract societal issue and making it tangible, visual, and highly compelling.
Moving right along to section 2, pre-writing and story structure. Before you type a single line of dialogue, you have to build the bones of your story. That happens in the pre-writing phase. Pre-writing often starts with brainstorming alongside your team, and the absolute golden rule here is to respect every single idea without immediate judgment. So, imagine a writer's room. Someone throws out a wild, seemingly impossible idea about that restaurant kitchen concept we just talked about. If you immediately shoot it down, boom, the creative energy dies. But if you hold off on judgment, someone else might build on it, and suddenly, wow, you have your ending. To keep track of all this creative chaos, use tools like graphic organizers or mind maps. A mind map lets you connect a character's motivation directly to the setting or the theme, visually linking ideas so you basically never hit writer's block. Just remember, have one conversation at a time and capture everything on paper first. Okay, now let's break storytelling down into pure math. It sounds crazy, but it works. This is the 3-act structure. Act 1 is your exposition, where the setting and protagonist are introduced. That should take up exactly 20% of your story. Act 2, the rising action, is where your protagonist faces a core challenge or conflict. This dominates a massive 60% of the narrative. Finally, Act 3 is your climax and ending, wrapping up the final 20%, where the story finds its resolution. When you're conceptualizing a 5-minute film, this mathematical pacing is absolutely critical. Think about it. In a 5-minute film, 20% exposition means you have exactly 1 minute, literally 60 seconds to introduce your character and their world before the inciting incident hits. If you take 2 minutes just to set the scene, you've already broken the math, and your audience is already bored. You really got to stick to the percentages.
That brings us to section 3, building your characters.
With your plot mathematically structured, it's time to breathe life into the people who will actually inhabit your world. To make your characters 3-dimensional and believable, you must define them across 3 main traits: physical, sociological, and psychological. Let's just invent a character right now to see how this works in real time. Let's call her Sarah. Okay, Physically, she's 25, always looks completely exhausted, and practically lives in a worn-out EMT jacket. Sociologically, she comes from a long line of debt-ridden medical workers, and she's barely scraping by on her current salary. Psychologically, she has a deep-seated, paralyzing fear of failing to save people, driven by a terrible past mistake. By mapping these three dimensions out during pre-writing, the character becomes real. Now, when Sarah walks into a scene, we know exactly how she's going to talk, how she'll react to stress, and what her inner motivations are. Let's move to Section 4, Elements of a Script. Now we're moving from conceptualization into actual drafting, which means we need to learn the specific language of a screenplay. First up is your scene heading, often called a slugline. This anchors the reader in time and space. It tells us if we're inside or outside using INT or EXT, the specific location and the lighting condition, like day or night. Beneath that, we have the action lines. Now pay attention here, because action lines describe only the literal, observable events happening on screen. I really want to emphasize this concept of unfilmables. If a character is thinking about their past, you absolutely cannot write that in the action line. You can't write, John thinks about his ex-wife and feels sad. Guys, a camera cannot film a thought. Instead, you write only what we can see. John stares at a torn photograph of a woman, his jaw clenched, and sweeps it off the desk. Visual storytelling is the absolute core of scriptwriting. When introducing a new face in those action lines, their character name must be fully capitalized the very first time we meet them. Then, when it's time for them to actually speak, their name is centered above their lines in uppercase letters, followed by their dialogue, which is centered perfectly beneath it. Now, why is dialogue centered instead of just running across the whole page like a novel? Well, two reasons. First, it gives the reader's eye a physical break from the dense blocks of action text. And second, it visually simulates how quickly people speak relative to page space. And remember, the dialogue is the exact spoken word. It shouldn't sound like a perfect grammar textbook. It needs to sound like real, flawed human speech, complete with natural interruptions and a real rhythm. Sometimes the dialogue needs just a little extra context, and that brings us to parentheticals. These are small directions showing how a line is delivered, like writing quietly or sarcastically right beneath the character's name. But be warned, you want to use these very, very rarely. In the industry, overusing parentheticals is known as riling a script. And let me tell you, actors absolutely hate it because it steps all over their creative toes. You have to trust your actors to find the emotion based on the scene itself. You also have transitions, things like cut to or fade to. These are film editing instructions placed on the far right side of the page. Just like parentheticals, use them sparingly. You generally only use a transition to indicate a massive, unavoidable shift in time or location. So all of those elements come together to form the anatomy of a script page, creating a very standardized visual map. You've got the scene heading at the top left, the action spanning the width of the page, and the character and dialogue squeezed right into the center. And this specific arrangement, it isn't just for aesthetics. It brings us to the ultimate golden rule of screenwriting. One page of properly formatted script equals roughly 1 minute of screen time. This perfectly ties back to our goal. If you are writing a 5-minute film, your script should be exactly 5 pages long. This formatting allows a producer to look at a stack of paper and instantly know the budget, the shooting schedule, and the overall pacing of the film. Finally, Section 5, Master Scene Script Format. To achieve that perfect 1 page per minute ratio, the formatting must be incredibly precise. It acts almost like a mathematical formula. Assuming an 80-space wide paper, scene headings and action descriptions sit at margins set at 5 and 60. Character names are centered tightly with margins at 20 and 40. Dialogue is squeezed into margins within 15 and 45. Now, don't panic. Screenwriting software will do all of this automatically for you, but understanding why these margins exist makes you a much better writer. The heavy indentation of dialogue preserves that critical 1 minute ratio, and the extra white space left on the page gives directors and script supervisors the physical room they need to write their shooting notes directly in the margins. Beyond the margins, there are a few structural rules you need to memorize. Shot numbers sit at the extreme left and right margins. Now, as a beginner, it's important to know that spec scripts, which are scripts written before they are sold, usually avoid shot numbers entirely. You want to let the director decide the visual style. However, a final shooting script will include them. Next, action descriptions and dialogue must be single-spaced. However, you must use double spacing to separate a scene from the next camera transition or to separate the speech of one character from the next. And finally, I am reiterating our most crucial rule. If the audience cannot literally see it or hear it, do not write it. Your script is an audiovisual blueprint. Nothing more, nothing less. When all these specific margins and rules are applied, it looks amazing. Take a close look at this beautifully formatted master scene script example. Notice the overall aesthetic of the page. See how the vast amount of white space guides the reader's eye effortlessly down through the scene? Screenplays are designed to be read incredibly fast. Notice the double spaces between the dialogue blocks, keeping everything super organized. Notice how the parenthetical sits neatly inside the dialogue margins. When a producer, an actor, or a director looks at a script formatted this cleanly, they know immediately that they are dealing with a professional who deeply, deeply understands the craft.
All right, before you call cut on your writing process, it's time for a final review. Let's quickly recap the journey today. We defined our 5-minute limit, we built a sturdy foundation in pre-writing, we breathed 3-dimensional life into our characters, learned the harsh truth about unfilmables, and mastered the rigid margins of industry format. But remember, writing is rewriting, so ask yourself these final assessment questions. Is the beginning of your plot established immediately, like within that first 60 seconds? Are your character portrayals consistent all the way through? Did you successfully depict the sociocultural theme you chose during pre-writing? A script is way more than just rigid formatting. It's a vehicle for empathy, understanding, and shared human experience. So I leave you with this. What is the unique social story that only you can tell? And now that you have the blueprint, are you ready to write it?